It's going live.
Do I need to put, got it?
Yep.
Or
No,
Just got it.
It's being live streamed. Did I just X out of that or just, yeah, got it. It's gonna be fine.
Okay, we want to welcome everybody.
Here it is.
Today, this is probably going to be our last one until the end of the summer, but we are excited. We've got Judy Baker here, and she is with White County Historical Society, and she wears several hats. She is a director, historian, president, and she's also the director of the museum. Tonight, she's here to talk about something that a lot of you guys have requested about learning about poorhouse records. So what we're going to do is I want to remind everyone, if you've attended before, you know, we like to save all the questions till the very end. The best way for you to let us know if you have a question is just type it in the comments. If you can put a Q in front of it, that notifies us so we can pick it out pretty easily that you have a question. And then when Judy is all done with her presentation, we'll go ahead and have her answer some of those questions for you guys. But before we begin with the presentation, I'd like Judy to kind of introduce herself, tell us how she got into genealogy, how she got in the poorhouse records, and all that fun stuff. Go ahead, Judy.
As she says, I'm Judy Baker. I'm the director of the White County Historical Society. And this evening, you know, I'm going to attempt to give you an overview of some of the things that's available within the different counties in Indiana. No county, it seems like, is exactly alike. So if you're doing research, you're going to want to follow through in your county and kind of explore. But by me referring to my local, it gives you an idea of what's going on in White County and what's available here, that many of the same things would be available probably within your county, but it gives you an idea of where to head or where to shoot for. I'm going to start with the Poor Farm, which is one of the names that the county has been known for on that level that we're discussing. It's also been called the County Farm, the Poor Farm, the Poor House, the Poor Asylum, and the White County Asylum. And interestingly, it just seems like the NOMER changed through different eras. So why it switched around, I have no idea. So if your county's like this one, you may be looking for a different name at different times. But anyway, the true poorhouses really kind of went to a close in the 1930s. You know, and so for many people, you know, they look at it as a shameful situation if your family had to be in one of the poorhouses. You know, I'm just going to name a few people that probably are known by most people that at one time in their life or another that they were in a poorhouse. One was Charlie Chaplin. One was Babe Ruth. Another was Annie Oakley. And another one was the author James Michener. So you can see that many people have, you know, ancestry that can be different than what maybe you might have hoped. Everybody wants to be, you know, the smartest and the wealthiest and all that. That's not real life. So in going on with this, the system provided work for people, provided shelter for those who were unfortunate and poverty stricken. They had no way to provide for themselves. Unfortunately, sometimes the conditions were harsh, and many families were separated. Some were not even allowed to communicate. But here in White County, we did not have a quote, bona fide poorhouse that you had to work off a debt. And so the conditions here were not nearly as severe as that otherwise would have been. So I'm going to give you some of the local history. Our county's organized in 1834. The first expenditure within the county that had to provide for funding for somebody who could not care for themselves was $18.39, and the price was $39 for the year to cover that. Many people, you know, in that time period did the best that they could in trying to take care of their families, but unfortunately not everybody could do that. So therefore we have the system. In 1856, just to give you an idea of the increase of cost to the taxpayers, 1856, the expense was $817. 1882, $2,274. Now, during the time from 1839 to 1857, you did what they called a farm out. They farmed out individuals to other people within the community that the county paid those people for taking care of them. So that's what they did to help the most, you know, the unfortunates. If in this map, and I'm assuming that everybody could see that, yes. Here we have two highlighted sections. This is Honey Creek Township within White County. And in 1857, now I know that the map says 1873, but I don't have an 1857. So I'm showing you where the location was. In section 13, the county had purchased 160 acres. In section 17, the one to the left, that section of 40 acres, they bought all of that from J.C. Reynolds to the tune of $3,250. So the house, because there was a house on that 160 acres, they used that house for the residence of the indigent people. And, you know, kind of giving you an idea of what the daily routine was, you know, they put them to work if they could. Everybody was trying to get by the cheapest that they could. So that was one of the objects of that. You know, if they could clean floors, if they could just do general cleaning, if they could do sewing, gardening, cooking, working outside on the grounds, trying to keep things up to date, preparing and raising the food. They had big gardens and they did a lot of canning. The superintendent and his wife did do the recordings within the books, you know, and I will say that the spelling and the education of whether it was the superintendent or his wife that was doing the recording, that will depend on how complete, you know, and how legible they are. So you kind of, you know, you've got to give them a little slack. The wife usually ran the kitchen. And this particular facility that was within that house on that 160 acres, by 1875, the facility was declared unsanitary. Now, my imagination, I don't think it's too far out. So the things that I'm thinking about is total filth, dirty, cockroaches, fleas, bed bugs, hair lice, body lice, mice, and rats. It had to be pretty bad for the county to just plain declare it unsanitary. So in December of 1875, the county built a better frame house to the cost of $3,000 on this same particular piece of property. Now you can go to the next slide. This is showing the spines of the ledgers that were given to us at the White County Historical Society by the county commissioners. And these came to us, I'm going to say maybe 3-4 years ago. So you can go to the next frame. This is the first ledger with the earlier dates showing names, sex, age, like place of birth, the date that they were admitted, and by whose order were they admitted to the facility. In 1883, these grounds, which I'm sure had a lot to do with, the farming of making gardens and producing enough food to take care of the indigents. By 1883, they had purchased up to 280 acres at that time. So you can go to the next frame. This is the second ledger showing the expenditures. And as you can see on this particular site that, as I said, sometimes maybe they didn't have an expenditure in that time period, so you're not going to see anything. And yet, like Edward Casey, obviously he had, I can't even quite get it, $78 was suspended and $40 was subtracted. Let's go down to John Yopes. He needed a pair of pants, cost $1.50. You won't find that today. But anyway, that gives you kind of an idea of some of the things you can find of who was actually, and they use the term, don't be offended, but they use the term inmates at that time. So now you can go on down to the next. This third ledger, as you can see, it says poor asylum. It was really a census of the residents. It shows where the name, the age, when they were born, when they were admitted, and by whom, the health, if they were fit for labor, when they were discharged, if they died, the cause of death, and remarks. So, this again can be a very valuable, I've had people since we've received this, one lady, Darby, I think was the last name. She was just tickled to death. She just felt like there was a point that he just kind of disappeared from, sight. And yet here he was. And it just hit me when she said I couldn't find him. I thought, let's try the poorhouse and see if he's there. And sure enough, he was. Okay, let's go to the next frame. This is the fourth ledger. It isn't an alphabetical. And if you will shift over to the right so we can see the tabs. Keep going, I think. Maybe not. No. Well, anyway, as you can see, this happens to be A. So it's just a kind of a general index of the residents, gives a little bit, but behind the tabs of A, B, C, for the alphabetical listing, then then it will give you a little bit more. Now, again, sometimes there'll be something there, and then another time there won't be any. And so I think it really may depend a lot on the time period, but this is the fourth book that we have. So you can go to the next frame. If you can go down just a little bit so we can get the full effect of the map. Thank you. This, in 1907, the commissioners and the county council purchased in Union Township. This is Union Township, where the other one was Honey Creek. They purchased 150 acres from Daniel McQuaig for $16,500. 70 acres were in section 16. That's along the river, and 80 acres in section 17. Now, if you'll note, in that kind of highlighted area where it's circled, where it says CEM, that was a cemetery. The interesting part about that cemetery is that cemetery existed before the county ever bought these lands, because their intent was to build a new facility. So through the years, that cemetery has been known as Norway Cemetery, Cemetery, County Farm Cemetery, and then later, after 1925, known as Lakeview Cemetery. Now, it's possible that the county had purchased land and created that cemetery as a pauper cemetery. But I can honestly say I really do not know absolutely the facts on that. But I wanted to then explain about the facility that they decided to build. It was a modern brick building at the cost of $33,364.91. They had bath and toilet on both floors, but I don't think there was bath and toilet in every room, so you shared. They used an 8 horsepower gasoline engine that did provide the power for the steam, heat, lights, and water. If you'll go to the next frame, and if you can go down just a little bit. Okay. This is really the opening, and I think that was March of 1907 that they, no, I think maybe it was in September, in the fall of that year, that they completed this building. And one of the factors, which it kind of shows itself in how they took the picture, if you'll notice on the right side of the picture, or well, as you're looking at the picture, is the women. On the left side is the men. And I'm sure in the center is the superintendent and his family. In this facility at that time, they made provisions for the superintendent and his family to have a residence there. The residents were also separated by sex. So, I think that's what counts for women on one side and men on the other. The capacity of this facility was 88 inmates, as they called it. But they knew that it could be doubled without too serious amount of money spent if they needed to do that. Now, many of the residents actually came and went. As we've looked through those ledgers, you'll see where somebody came in and then maybe in the spring they left, maybe a year or 2 years later they come back in, and the same thing. So it could depend on maybe their health issues, or it could depend on their situation that, that caused them to come back and forth. But to go on with telling you about this facility, in the basement of this facility, there were 2 prison cells. And I believe that I have no proof of this, but I believe that the 2 cells, one was for men and one was for women. I don't believe that they had those cells as a permanent dwelling for the person. I believe it was really a temporary situation that, if somebody within the county went insane, they could take them there, put them in that cell, and they could at least keep them from harming anybody or themselves. And then the closest facility for the insane in White County is they would then go to Longcliff, which was a hospital for the insane, or actually they called it a hospital, but it was a facility for the insane. And I'm not sure I mentioned, but it was at Logansport in Cass County, Indiana, which is the county just to the east of us. So now if you go to the next frame. Good. This is a page, another page of Ledger Book 4. This shows you at the top of the headings, like when the people were admitted, shows their names. Were they sickly? Were they crippled? Were they paralytic, blind, deaf, insane? Over on the right side of the book, it gave if they again, you can see that some of them are not totally filled out. The father's name, the mother's name, the date that they were discharged, sometimes if they died, where they were buried. Many would give the date of their death, and then remarks. But the thing I want to point out to anybody hoping to do research is that even though we do have these books, you can see that there's many that you've got the information, but there's many and maybe more of that you don't. But at least you know that in the census that they were in that facility. And you go to the next frame. This is a close-up of that same page, showing to the right side, where they're asking the questions, were they able-bodied? Were they female? Were they sickly? Were they crippled? Were they paralytic? And like you see, the first two lines, there was an answer to that. But by the third line, there's only one check. And that really doesn't say, yes, they did, or no, they didn't. So you have to go with a height of anticipation, but don't be disappointed in what you find. I think just knowing that they were in the census of that facility sometimes is all you may find. Okay, let's go to the next frame. This is also another page from book 4. This happens to be the C's, as you can see, Cowger and all the different ones. And you might be able to shift over to the right to show the tabs, but it's not important. Yes, there you see them. That the very front of it gives you, it's more of a census. It's telling you that, yes, they're in there, gives you a little bit of information. And if it was prominent as the one, I think it's Cohee Frank, says he died September 16th, 1947. But in the back, behind all these tabs, then again, you might find more information, or you may not find any more information. The facility become known as Lakeview Home in 1925. The Social Security Act came into effect, and many of the county homes faded away. But here in White County, ours continued. And just to give you a bit of a humorous story about the county home, a man by the name of Dudley G. Elmore, who was known as DG, he was born in the Lakeview home on the 6th of March, 1936. His parents were Dudley and Ethel. Her maiden name was Stantz with a Z on the end. Of course, Elmore is the last name. Now, they were some relation to the superintendents that were being used at that employed at that particular time. And so the husband and the superintendent decided they wanted to go to the local ball game. Now, Ethel was pregnant. Of course, they leave, and the first thing I would assume, probably her water broke, and she knew she was now going to be in active labor. Well, of course, we didn't have cell phones then, didn't even have really good telephone service. And they sent for Dr. Gable, who was a local doctor in Monticello. He came to the county farm. He delivered the baby. When the husband came home, he had a new son. But DG loved to blow people away, to say, well, I was born at the local poor farm. It was one of his personal delights to be able to tell that story. To go on, the National Health Service Act of 1946 came into force in 1948. And the poor law system was abolished. Now, again, our county farm continued, but it become then as part of the local welfare system. By 1950, most of the county farms had disappeared from use. A lady by the name of Kay Fuller, they called her the administrator at that time instead of the superintendent. She had she and her group, she organized together a group called the Friends of Lakeview Home, because they knew that it was getting to the point with the funding that they might close Lakeview Home. So they really put a big effort to improve the conditions at the home. Now, they did a lot of painting, did a lot of decorating. They offered activities. I went there and spoke. So there was just a lot of things that were done to try to keep it, keep it uppermost into the county commissioner's appearance that things are really going on well. But unfortunately, time takes its toll and expenses reaches a point that it can't be done. But you now can go to that next frame. If you come down just a little bit. This is a picture that was done in 1999 for Christmas, but I mean, you can see the grass is green, so it was also a nice year, and you can see the wreath and the ribbons on the fences and that it was Christmas of that year. It was a nice year. And so Kay Fuller, this was of her time period in her era that she really worked hard to maintain this facility. But unfortunately, by 2009, which was just 10 years after this, that the county could not justify the expense just for the utilities alone, plus the staff that it took to keep the facility functioning. And unfortunately, it did close. In 2010, the land and the building sold for $570,000. The next year or so, I'm not sure if it was that year or maybe the next year, that they ended up tearing down the facility. And of course, just made a big, which side are you on? Side of tearing the facility down or keeping it? So it was a big issue within the county. After that, White County Historical Society was giving those ledger books that we showed you that connects to the residents. And all of this can be a help. Now, what we're planning to do is to complete an index of all the superintendents with the years of the time that they served. And we also want to create a complete index of the residents that we can accumulate. So that's something that we yet are hoping to do to make better and complete records for all of you out there. And I will say that you can go to your county commissioner's office. It's most of the time it's through them or a county council, depending, again, you have to ask when you go into your courthouse to ask how that was done. But if the county put money out, then they had to get approval. And of course it had to be signed and go through all the, phases that it takes to have an expenditure within a county's budget. So many of those records still are available. So that is also an area that you might want to check out. And that's something that we will be doing, is checking the county commissioner's records for expenditures, which that tells us who was a resident within the facility and what they were needing. In that, it may show that a doctor was called, or that they had to take him to a doctor, or maybe they had to go to a hospital. And if they passed, then it also might say a grave had to be dug, so they had to pay for the digging of that grave, and that what am I trying to say? Coffin, couldn't rank of the word, that a coffin had to be built for them. Plus the fact that this is something that you must remember, though, the county does not pay for a tombstone, even though you see that they died, unless somebody else put a tombstone down. You're not going to find it through like Find a Grave, or you're not going to find it, in cemetery records. But anyway, I just wanted to explain how that works. And I wish you the best of luck. There is information out there. You just have to know how to get and make access to it. And I thank you for your time.
We had a couple of questions, Judy.
Sure.
How can people, is there a place that people can go to search to find out where there might be poorhouses in different counties or states that you know of?
Well, normally if you go to the commissioners, they're going to tell you if there ever was, because they were the ones that had, it could be a county council or county's commissioners through the years, from 1800s to 1900s through present time. But that's where I would start in trying to find out. And, there's counties that I'm sure have with, because they have a bigger population, that there may be more than just one.
Okay. And then another question, it's kind of a little bit different, but was there ever a debtor's prison at all, or did they just end up at the poorhouses?
To my knowledge, here in White County, and that's all I can speak for, there was no debtor's prison. Most of that was handled between the individuals, but in larger cities, they were, it did become an issue, and that they did have debtor's prison. But that's why I explained that, that there is a difference between what we have had here. We called it the poorhouse. We called it the poor farm. It just meant that the people didn't have the finances to keep themselves, but it was not a debtor's prison here.
Okay. I think that was the only questions. Let me quickly scroll through here to make sure we don't have any more. I do not see any more. We will put down contact information for Judy in the comments. Like we said earlier, she's with the White County Historical Society. So if you guys had more questions, you'll be able to email her and see if Judy can help out.
Well, and did you put our phone number in that?
I'll add the phone number as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That way anyone.
Well, a lot of people, that more elderly people than myself may not be as adept at the internet, and so many of them are better to pick up a phone. That's why I just thought that we could include that.
We'll include it all then for you.
Okay.
and so all of you know, this is going to be, you can watch it later. I know a couple of people were going through tornado warnings and stuff. We'll have it where you can watch it again on Facebook, and you watch as many times as you need to. And then, like I said, Judy's information will be down there. And did you have anything else you wanted to add, Judy?
No, other than don't be discouraged that if you can't find your ancestor at a certain point, just like that Darby family that I was telling you about, she just couldn't understand how he just like disappeared off the face of the map. He did exist. He was in the county farm, and it was just, I don't know, it was just one of those things that popped in my head as she was telling me. I said, well, let me look in these ledgers that I got from the county farm. Let's see. Sure enough, he was there, So it's an avenue to check out.
Absolutely. You never know.
No.
All right. Well, thank you, Judy. We're going to go ahead and log out of Facebook, and thank you all for watching.
And thank you for taking your time to put up with me.
You are wonderful.